Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Orphic Astrology channel. My name is Natalia Alas, and this video will go over the full moon conjunct fixed star Alpheratz at 14 degrees tropical Aries. We'll begin by briefly covering the lunation along with the symbolism of its fixed star, and then get into the three magical plant allies for working with this full moon. The full moon in tropical Aries this year arrives at 3:47 a.m. Universal Time. Here in Benin, it will peak around 4:47 a.m. in the 8th house, reflected in my chart here on the screen. So please keep that in mind, as the chart for the full moon in your location will look different depending on where you are. This lunation is significant as the first non-occulted lunation since eclipse season 2 weeks ago, and as the first Aries lunation that is not an eclipse since 2022. So we can track the timeline of this full moon as the culmination or finalization of events that were perhaps uprooted or possibly shaken loose at the start of this lunar cycle, with the solar eclipse in 29 degrees Virgo, opposite Saturn retrograde in 28 degrees Pisces on September 21st. We can also put it into perspective with the previous lunation in Aries about 6 months ago, back on March 29th, which was the last solar eclipse in Aries. And then going even further back to 19 years ago, or one Metonic lunar cycle, on October 7th, 2006, when the full moon peaked near the same degree at 13 degrees 43 tropical Aries. In other words, there are layers to the fabric of time and its cyclical patterns that are being activated in parallel with this full moon, and in many ways, it will act as a rite of passage for us as we come out of a very volatile eclipse season and now enter into some martial waters, with the full moon in Aries being ruled this year by Mars in its nocturnal domicile and Mercury co-present in Scorpio, leading up to the Mercury-Mars partile conjunction later in the month. Courage and steadfastness, the fierceness to walk through the fire to the other side where freedom waits, to stand up against injustices and speak truth to power with a lot of underlying grief, are some of the themes for this full moon. In perspective with the previous Aries lunation, the solar eclipse in Aries earlier this year was conjunct the fixed star Alpheratz at 9 degrees Aries. Mercury was co-present at 0 degrees Aries and retrograde. Venus was also retrograde and back in Pisces, conjunct Neptune, the North Node, and Saturn. Both Venus and Mercury station retrograde at 9 degrees Aries, conjunct Alpheratz, the wing of Pegasus, a couple weeks apart from each other in March. So that lunation was impactful for consummating chapters that were tied to the synodic cycles of Mercury and Venus. It may be useful to reflect on what was going on for you back then, and also to consider the topics that Venus and Mercury, and of course Mars, governs in your nativity, to see what may still need closure, release, or integration. Now, this full moon happening on October 6th or 7th, depending on your location, is conjunct the fixed star Alpheratz at 14 degrees tropical Aries. Alpheratz is the brightest star in the asterism of the Great Square of Pegasus, and conjoins the Andromeda constellation with the Pegasus constellation. The Great Square Pegasus is made up of Alpheratz along with Algenib, Markab, and Skiat. The Babylonians called the Great Square of Pegasus Mulashgan, meaning the field, since barley would be planted around the time when the field would begin to rise, and the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, represented celestially by the Pisces constellation, began to flood in late winter. So this asterism was symbolic of the Babylonian civilization lying in the fertile field between the two rivers, mirrored by the two fishes in the sky. The field asterism was further associated as the abyss, the mythic conception of the water table lying below the Earth's surface, which supplies us with fresh water springs, rivers, and lakes. The abyss was considered the dwelling place of Enki, the creation deity of the waters, knowledge, magic, fertility, and healing, and was therefore seen as a celestial shrine of wisdom and mystery, dispensing the replenishing waters and divine knowledge that is incomprehensible to humankind. The Greeks viewed the field or the abyss as the body of the winged horse that sprang from the spilled blood of Medusa. The name Pegasus actually comes from the Pege of Okeanos, Pege meaning springs or the replenishing waters. So this region of the sky carries star lore associations with mystery and magic and primordial divine wisdom. While Algenib marks the wing of Pegasus along with Markab, Skiat marks the foreleg and Alpheratz the belly of Pegasus. The name Alpheratz is derived from the Arabic al-Surat al-Faras, meaning the horse's navel, and it later came to be referred to as al-Ras al-Mara al-Musal Salah, meaning the head of the woman in chains, for marking the head of the Andromeda constellation in the storytelling of Perseus rescuing the princess of Ethiopia on the back of Pegasus. Alpheratz is considered to be the most auspicious star in the Great Square of Pegasus, being classified as having the nature of Jupiter and Venus combined, and is traditionally associated with achieving independence and freedom, love, riches, and honor, the keen intellect, and wisdom. The full moon conjunct Alpheratz has the potential of liberating us from our chains by noticing our valid anger, frustrations, and rage or other heavy emotions, and tracing these to their root. Often these stem from systemic injustice and patriarchal violence, which Aries as a sign can reflect back to us. The full moon can activate these experiences, and with self-knowledge and stellar guidance, we hold the grace to transmute or channel our challenges into a path of spiritual liberation. But it's never easy. It requires our commitment to our freedom and devotion to our love for one another, since none of this is an overnight process. Full moons can be difficult because they represent a climax of events, bringing with them some sort of ending or decline towards the end of a cycle. And the lunar light reflects back to us at its height, drawing in the tides and filling our capacities past the brim. Aries, as the initiatory cardinal point, mirrors our impulses, but also our willingness to break free of stagnant patterns. It is fiery and choleric, stimulating and bold, virile and intimidating, brilliant and distinguished, but has the liabilities of being authoritarian, hard on offenders, boastful and unstable. When afflicted, Aries lunations can be hard to handle. This full moon is averse to both of the malefics, but that doesn't necessarily diminish its intensity. Mercury will be squaring off with Pluto, and Mars is separating from Pluto, and their narrative is secretly running the show. So I'd like to share 3 magical plant allies that can support us through this full moon. Number 1, Greek sage, Salvia fruticosa or Salvia triloba. According to Hermes Trismegistus in the Catalogus Codicum Astrologorum Graecorum, the sign of Aries is assigned to Greek sage and oregano, which we'll cover next. So these two plants have sympathia with Aries and are supportive allies when working with Aries transits, in particular those of the luminaries. Greek sage is not to be confused with white sage or common sage. It has a more intense taste and fragrance. Salvia fruticosa is native to the Eastern Mediterranean, the Canary Islands, and North Africa, and is found abundant in Palestine and Lebanon. It can grow up as a shrub more than half a meter or about 2 feet tall and wide, with the flowering stalks rising another third of a meter or foot higher. The leaves are hairy and grow in clusters, giving it a silvery hue and bushy form, and the variation changes depending on the geographical area. Its flowers can range from pinkish to purple. Its Latin name salvia signifies to save or to heal in reference to its many healing properties. And salvia can be traced to the Gallo-Roman sabius and further to the Latin sapere, meaning to know, to have good taste, to have wisdom. The common name Greek sage for this species is due to its long tradition of use within Greece. The earliest depiction of Salvia fruticosa is found on a Minoan fresco circa 1400 BCE at Knossos on the island of Crete. It is widely considered that the ancient Phoenicians and Greeks introduced the plant for cultivation on the Iberian Peninsula, and in Palestine, the flower's pollen has been harvested by honeybees in the production of honey for centuries. It also has a long tradition of use in various Muslim and Orthodox Christian ceremonies, marking key life chapters and rites of passage for newborn children, at weddings, and in funerals. It is often burnt as incense and is, of course, used in cooking. Greek sage actually accounts for 50 to 95% of the dried sage sold in North America and is grown commercially for its essential oil. Across Mediterranean cultures, sage has been renowned for its medicinal and culinary uses, as well as for its magical properties. There are over 900 species of sage or salvia found worldwide with their varying characteristics and uses. Some of the most commonly known types include common sage, Salvia officinalis, also native to the Mediterranean region, and white sage, Salvia apiana, native to the southern coastal region of so-called California and the western edges of the Mojave and Sonoran deserts. I would encourage you to substitute with common sage, even if that species lies under Jupiter's sympathia, or other varieties if you don't have access to Greek sage, but do not use white sage since it has been overharvested and is experiencing population devastation at this time. White sage is an important food source for many animals in its region, and it is illegal to harvest from nature reserves. So most of the white sage on the market is obtained illegally and unethically, despite the claims of those selling it. White sage is extremely sacred to the indigenous peoples of Southern California and Northern Mexico, and they have less access to it since it has been in such high demand since the 1960s. Indigenous peoples of those regions teach us that this sacred plant should never be sold and have been asking non-Indigenous folks to stop using it. So avoid white sage out of respect and use one of the other 899 species instead. Now back to Greek sage. The parts used are primarily the leaves and flowers. Its principal actions are stimulant, antibacterial, astringent, tonic, and carminative. Its taste is aromatic, pungent, mildly bitter, and oily. Its magical uses include workings of protection for warding against malevolent spirits and breaking curses. and for guidance, as it supports receiving clarity and wisdom, as well as in renewal and rejuvenation rituals for starting anew. You can prepare it through infusions, tinctures. Topical applications include infused oils for fomentations and liniments. The dried leaves and flowers may also be burned in suffumigations as incense and added to charms and amulets or powdered down to dress candles and other workings. Fresh leaves and flowers can be added in baños or limpias, spiritual baths, floor washes, etc. Number 2, oregano, Origanum vulgare. Oregano is the second plant attributed to Aries by Hermes Trismegistus. It is also native to the Mediterranean region and Asia, but has been widely naturalized across the temperate northern hemisphere. It can grow up to almost a meter high or almost 3 feet tall. The olive green leaves are spade-shaped and the flowers vary from purple, pink to white. Over the course of centuries, humans have developed many subspecies and strains of oregano to cultivate unique flavors or other characteristics. Origanum vulgare is actually considered to have a rather bland taste and is not the preferred for culinary purposes, but we include it as its subspecies were cultivated for greater taste and use. The Greek kaliteri, an Origanum vulgare subspecies of the Hirtum strains, has the best reputation for flavor and pungency with the strong archetypal oregano flavor. The parts used are primarily the leaves and flowers. Its principal actions are antimicrobial, antioxidant, antispasmodic, analgesic, anti-inflammatory, and antiparasitic. Its taste varies between pungent, mildly bitter to sweet and spicy, depending on the subspecies. And its magical uses are versatile. For empowerment, helps to cultivate courage, strength, and resilience. For psychic protection and purification, it's worked in uncrossing and warding rituals. And for emotional, spiritual, and physical healing and purification. Like sage, you can work with oregano through infusions and tinctures, but be careful with topical applications that include its essential oil, as it is extremely irritant when applied directly to the skin. So I would avoid working with the essential oil of oregano for topical applications, but instead use infused oils such as olive oil with its fresh leaves. You can also dilute 1 to 2 drops of the essential oil into a tablespoon or more of carrier oil if you want to work with it. The dried leaves and flowers may also be burned in suffumigations and added to charms and amulets or powdered down to dress candles. Fresh leaves and flowers can also be added in baños or spiritual baths, floor washes, etc. Last but definitely not least, rosemary, Rosmarinus officinalis or Salvia rosmarinus. Rosemary is actually classified as a solar herb, so I wanted to include it since Aries is the sign of the sun's exaltation, and the full moon in Aries mitigates the sun fallen in Libra by reception. And rosemary is a fabulous plant ally under many occasions. This is one of my favorite plants to work with for so many reasons. It was one of the principal plants that my abuela would first plant whenever we moved into a new home after immigrating to the US. And she also had it growing in her garden in San Salvador. She always made it a priority to plant a rosemary shrub near our front door as a home warming ritual. And when I got older, I realized she was warding our home by doing this. It was one of her favorite plants, and it became one of mine in turn. So I absolutely adore rosemary. Rosemary is also native to the Mediterranean region, including the Iberian Peninsula, and was naturalized in North Africa, West Asia, and later East Asia, Northern Europe, and the Americas. The earliest references of its use appear on cuneiform stone tablets as far back as 5000 BCE, while other early mentions of rosemary come to us from ancient Egypt, where the plant was used in embalming and other funerary rituals. The 5th century BCE Greek historian Herodotus describes 3 types of embalming using rosemary along with cedar, juniper, cinnamon, aloes, and other oils. Its association with death, rebirth, and the afterlife, immortality, can be found across cultures. From this, it is believed its association with remembrance also developed. Mnemosyne, the Greek muse of memory and remembering, is often depicted carrying sprigs of rosemary. Additionally, the herb was used as a mnemonic enhancer. In ancient Greece and Rome, students wore crowns of rosemary during examinations to improve their memory, and recent studies now substantiate these traditional practices, demonstrating that consuming rosemary or breathing in its scent are shown to improve memory and other cognitive functions. It also has associations with the goddesses Minerva, Aphrodite, and later the Virgin Mary. Its Latin name, Rosmarinus, translates as sea dew, since it thrives best by the sea. Traditionally, it was classified under Rosmarinus officinalis, and only recently in 2017, it was renamed to Salvia rosmarinus. It is an evergreen shrub that can grow up to 1.2 to 1.8 meters or 4 to 6 feet tall, with its leaves resembling needles. The parts used are its aerial parts, meaning everything above the ground. Its principal actions include, but aren't limited to, being an antidepressant, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, antispasmodic, antioxidant, astringent, bitter, carminative, stimulant, diaphoretic, expectorant, hepatic, nervine, and tonic. Its taste is pungent, aromatic, resinous, and slightly bitter, with its energetics being warming, drying, and stimulating. Rosemary has a vast number of medicinal, culinary, and magical applications. Its properties are beneficial for regulating the circulatory, digestive, and nervous systems. It is also an important plant in wound healing, breastfeeding, and menstrual regulation, among so many other things. And in magic, some of its key uses are for protection of the mind, spirit, and emotions by dispelling melancholy and restoring the memory, and warding against evil spirits and unwanted entities, in grounding and empowerment rituals, also for remembrance and reverence of one's dead, as well as the living by remembering our loved ones. It can be prepared and worked with through infusions, tinctures, hydrosols, essential oil diffusion, as well as topical applications that include infused oils. The sprigs may be burned as incense or placed under the pillow for dream recall. Spraying the hydrosol or rubbing the leaves between your fingers to release its scent can also help you focus or clear stagnation. Boiling rosemary is also a household remedy for purifying the air. You can then add the cooled down water to spiritual baths, floor washes, etc. So these 3 plants are staples in kitchen witchery, but I hope that this video has given you some inspiration for how to work with 3 magical plant allies for this full moon in Aries. I'd like to add that if you don't get around to doing any rituals with these plants during the peak of the full moon, you can still work with them in the days following as the moon wanes, especially in suffumigations and ritual baths for clearing and releasing. And of course, you can incorporate these plant allies along with others at any time, but with the intention for gaining clarity, releasing stagnant energy, or cleansing any residual psychic debris from the recent eclipse season, or for warding your abode. I encourage you to incorporate these around this time. Let me know in the comments if you found any of this useful. I'd love to know some of the ways you work with these plants or any other allies during the full moon if you're inclined to share. And a special shout out to my wonderful patrons and supporters. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and give my video a like. I'm wishing you all a safe and blessed full moon. Thanks for watching, and ciao until next time.